I'm joined on the set today by Alison Sargent for the press review. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Jeannie.
You are starting in the UK, where there is an incredible amount of anger over those allegations that the government broke its own coronavirus restrictions last year by holding a Christmas party.
This so-called Partygate scandal has really hit a personal note for a lot of people in the UK who at the time were themselves making really big sacrifices for these restrictions. One such story is on the front page of the Edinburgh Evening News today. It's from an ICU nurse. He says, "While they were partying, I was caring for people who were dying." Meanwhile, the cartoonist Dave Brown for Leftwing paper The Independent shows Boris Johnson as Ebenezer Scrooge, haunted by his ghost of Christmas past. He's trying to cover it up there with the new Plan B COVID measures that he announced yesterday, but you see his nose, elongated from all of those lies, has ripped right through it. The paper asks in their editorial, who now can take the Prime Minister seriously? Johnson's credibility really does seem to be at stake here. A lot of criticism is coming from his own party and from conservative papers like right-wing tabloid The Sun here. They depict Johnson as the Grinch on their front page. He's telling the public to do as I say, not as I Christmas do. The paper is also noting that the public now has these 4 new restrictions, but for the government, only one rule applies: do as you please until you get found out.
All right, Alison, let's come back now to France and French politics, where it seems like the idea of rallying the left behind one single candidate for the presidential election might be back on the table.
This is after a televised interview last night in which socialist candidate Anne Hidalgo called on fellow left-wing politicians to hold a left-wing primary. Libération's headline seems to be mocking the idea a little bit today, a retour en primaire, which suggests both a return to the idea of a primary, but also a return to primary school. The paper reminds us that all previous attempts to get left-wing candidates to agree to having a primary have failed. Libé also notes that this call from Anne Hidalgo seems to be in part a way of putting herself back at the center of the debate. They remind us that she is polling at a dismal 4%. Meanwhile, though, there is one woman who might be capable of uniting the left, and we read in Le Monde that she may be considering entering the race. This is Christiane Taubira, France's former justice minister. Now, the paper writes that all it took was one article from BFM citing her entourage, and now that's all that the left is talking about is will she or won't she. Le Monde, though, does point out that Taubira herself has said nothing yet about her intentions, and she has played with the emotions of left-wing voters in this way before, so her participation does remain a very big if.
All right, let's leave France now for New Zealand, where that government has made an exceptional announcement. They're planning on banning cigarettes for an entire generation.
Their goal is to create a smoke-free generation. This plan is the very first of its kind. How would it work? Well, the Australian paper, the Sydney Morning Herald, explains that all those aged 14 and under when the law comes into effect, which would probably be next year, would be banned from smoking for life. Now, the paper notes that smoking kills 14 people in New Zealand every single day, and that native Maori people are disproportionately impacted. In fact, smoking rates among the Maori are about 31%, more than twice that of the general population. And the government in New Zealand said that these drastic measures were needed to prevent the Maori population from being left behind. Now, despite health officials praising the move, the New Zealand Herald is expressing some concern that the legislation could feed an already growing black market for cigarettes. The paper cites critics of the ban who say that prohibition has never worked. They say the best way to wean people off of tobacco are other measures like offering more vaping products and lowering the percentage of nicotine in cigarettes.
All right, next now to Saudi Arabia, where dozens of contestants at a beauty pageant were disqualified for using Botox.
And the twist here, Jeannie, is that this was a beauty pageant for camels. We read in The Guardian that breeders had used Botox to enlarge their lips and heads, used hormones to boost their muscles, and inflated other body parts using rubber bands, which I'm curious about how that actually works. Altogether, over 40 camels had to be disqualified. So to me, this is all just further further proof that beauty pageant culture is very toxic for everyone, including for animals.
Those poor camels. All right, let's stick on the topic of beauty, Allison, just to wrap up with your last story. It seems that ugliness can actually be extremely desirable.
Well, that is the case, Jeannie, when it comes to holiday sweaters. We read in Libération that a line of extremely kitschy Christmas sweaters made by the discount German grocery store Lidl have become the hot item of the season. They cost just $8.99 and have completely sold out in Belgium. They're set to be released in France next week. Now, Libération explains that the passion for the sweaters and for other Lidl merchandise shows the success of the brand's strategy of turning any shame from being a low-cost store instead into a sense of community and pride. The paper also salutes Lidl's marketing team for its perfect understanding of so-called drop culture, which is when you release only a limited amount of a product to create a lot of added hype. So if you want one, Jeannie, you're going to have to snap it up quite fast.
I think I'm okay if you're working at Lidl to wear that. It's a little bit of a commercial for me, but why not? I'm not nothing against holiday sweaters. Allison, thank you for that. Allison Sargent with that look at today's press review. Don't forget, if you want to get a closer look at that or any of the other stories we're covering for you throughout the day, you can always check out our website. The address is france24.com. It's time now for